sure that's, yeah, right. Okay. So, let's get going. Nice and easy as always, especially after the weekend break. So welcome to the session, everybody. Give yourself plenty of time for the settling in. Just running through a sort of checklist points. And one of the things about Tai Chi is that for all its diversity, there's just a relatively small number of things that we want to consider in terms of basic principles that we want to find in all the movements. So there's a series of writings collectively known as the Tai Chi classics, dating back several hundred years in some cases. And they're just little sort of notes that people have jotted down, really, in some ways or another. But there's a sort of verse in one of the older writings that says very simply, the movement is rooted in the feet, released in the legs, controlled by the center of the body, and expressed through the arms. I think it's the same piece of writing also says another place, first in the mind. So there's five things there, aren't there? There's the significance of the mind in terms of our working with that area where mind and body overlap. And then there's having an understanding of the basics that make up the building blocks of all the movements. We've got the rooting down, and we'll talk about rooting the feet. And that should draw your attention to your feet, but also to elements in rooting down to do with the alignment of your body, a sort of sense of letting go, if you like, in your body, particularly in your hips, your waist, pelvis, allowing your center of gravity to drop. Release in the legs. I suppose not so obvious with an exercise like this, but we can think of the legs, well, obviously, the legs will connect the feet with the rest of the body. And then, importantly, this growing awareness of what happens in the center of the body. So I'm thinking about the area between hips and waist, and different people will have slightly different ideas about that, but it's often generically referred to as Danjian, or the lower Danjian. Danjian just means field of energy, literal translation. There's actually three of them, three areas like that in the body: lower, middle, upper. But the central part of the body, there's ways that it's described. One of my favourite images is it's like a hub of a wheel. So when if you sit a bicycle wheel from the hub, everything moves, everything is affected. And expressed in the arms, both puts the arms in their rightful place, but also suggests that there's an importance there. It's the expression of the mood. So we don't ignore the arms, but we make sure that everything else is in place. It's a bit like the roof of a house. You don't put the roof on before the walls are built, but once the walls are built, you do need a roof. That's a fairly simple sort of mnemonic, really. Feet, legs, center, arms. It's starting to draw our attention back. Another part of some of those writings, they use the phrase that our minds are like the commander of the army, and the center of the body is like the banner. I mean, obviously this is a bit dated, referring to a much older style of army where the commander would stand up on the hill or something like that and see the whole battle and direct the troops to move in the banner, and the message will come back from the banner, and so on and so forth. And that's quite an interesting image, this interaction between body and mind is actually given a specific location, because if this is the part of the body that controls the movement, then anything to do with intent, you know, the way of imagination and ideas and so on and so forth, is sort of fed through the centre of the body, and any sense of, you know, what's coming back, particularly in the wider environment, can come back through that centre. Everything else is practice, and it's just a matter of getting used to those sort of qualities, those sort of features, and how they can be put together. That is the long-term process in Tai Chi. There was a very famous teacher who spent an afternoon throwing his students around the room, as they do sometimes. And then somebody said to him, "So what's the big secret? You know, how are you doing this?" And he said, just relax." So at heart, Tai Chi is not complicated art. It doesn't make it easy, but it does mean that for all the sort of complexity of some of the movements, there are some very simple ideas and principles underlying them. And it's those that we want to focus on as we start the session, making sure they're in place, making sure we have a sense of their significance, I suppose, as we get more used to the art. And then just raising your arms a little. Imagine you've got the ball in the palm of your hand, so you're keeping the palms of your hands facing up. And even going quickly like this, you want to get a sense that you're able to carry the ball, so you're not shaking your arms around or something like that. And then just drop your hands. Give it a little shake. So get your feet in position, hip width below your feet. And just to remind you that that can be measured in various ways. Some styles and some lineages of Tai Chi will measure it from the outside of the foot, giving you a slightly narrower stance. Others will be more in the sort of like the midline of the foot, so going down through your knee and so on and so forth, slightly wider. Others slightly wider again, so more towards the inside of the foot, which is my favourite. Again, the principle is your body in line? Is your body sorted? And if the answer to those is yes, then that's fine. So be prepared to play around with those. And remember also, you can have your feet slightly turned out if that's comfortable. But more than that, really, because then if you go further than that, this distance, I'm exaggerating slightly, you're likely to run into problems with the alignment of your knees. We need the knees pointed in the same direction as our toes always. So parallel lines, from shoulders to hips, to whichever part of the foot is appropriate for you, down the middle. On the side, those lines should be that if you see how I'm standing, come a bit closer so you can see my hand. When my arm just naturally falls, it's something like the little or the ring or the middle finger that is on this line going down the side of the leg. If I do this, I'm sort of pushing the chest out a little bit. If I do this, I'm hunched over. So that's a rough indication. See on the trousers in the way forward there. As I stand like that, it's my middle finger that's on the seam. So I've said before about the idea of grid lines on a map. That's a useful image to you. Just various ways that we hold a picture, we hold an idea, that we force ourselves into, but we just have it there as a sort of image, if you like. And then just letting your weight roll forwards and backwards. With that basic posture comes a very distinctive feel. We're not pushing hard, we're not straining to stay upright, we're looking for, in the first instance, that sense of a tightness in the body draining away, so there's a very loose feeling. And then balancing that out with a sort of growing sense of inner strength, connection in the body. And this is a good exercise for sort of playing with those ideas. So another way we can focus our attention is through what is sometimes referred to as the body scan. It's a very common meditational device, a very useful technique for just settling yourself in situations where you basically, without any intention to change anything, observe the different parts of the body, starting with your feet, feeling the transfer of your weight from front part of your heel to that point just behind the ball of your foot. And I like to, with this exercise, follow the movement up sort of through the bones of the body, through the bones of the legs, into our hips and pelvis. I want to feel that the skeleton is supported but not locked. So there's a sense of movement, small movement deep in the body. That's particularly useful, I think, when we get to the spine. We often hold our back very tight. We don't want to do that. We want the back to feel strong. We want the front of the body to sort of hang slightly from the back. And going up into shoulders and rib cage, and finally your arms. Your arms just follow the movement. We have a midpoint, a balance point, and a certain amount of movement either side of that. And one of the useful things to notice when we do this exercise is that the original movement in the feet is really quite small. It's about, roughly speaking, the arch of your foot. But just by allowing the body to move naturally, we have more movement now in our fingertips. So the range of the movement gradually builds. Just notice any areas in your body that feel a bit stiff or a bit tight. And then coming to that midpoint, letting your hips drop back, bringing your hands around, getting a sense of your center of gravity lowering and pushing up and sinking. Some of that feeling of sinking is very, very subtle. There's an obvious physical, visible element. You know, you can see my hips going back and so on and so forth. But even here, if I stop moving my hips, I still want to be aware of a sense of movement through the body. And that comes with time, that awareness of that. But one way you can play with that is by using a chair. And let me just carry on with the exercise. Let me just demonstrate what I'm talking about. If I have a chair here, and when I sit on it, then, even though my hips aren't going down anymore, there is still a movement downwards through my body. If there wasn't, I'd be floating up towards the ceiling. So the pull of gravity is still working through my body, and I can use this to become aware of that. And that sensation is an important element in the rooting down. Another way is I sit on the back of the chair, my hips are overhanging. They're not going down any further, but they're still feeling they're being pulled down. So the actual physical act of dropping your hips is only a part of the process of rooting down. Even now I find with this exercise, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of trying to push a stick into the ground and you're kind of ramming it down and then it suddenly gives. Every now and then I find that there's just sort of like releasing. I suddenly feel that I've gone down much further. But be careful of your knees because there's a limit to how far your legs should be physically bending. And as always, that's partly dependent on your knees and how they're feeling and the condition of these muscles, thigh muscles. And then change into the wild goose. You can play with these ideas and take note of what changes. If you move your weight forwards or backwards or move your shoulders or something like that, how does that feel? And again, different ways of describing the overall quality of the feeling in the body with Tai Chi. But I've used terms like spaciousness, open, a movement that is very fluid and harmonious. And these all become little sort of indicators. When those feelings, however you choose to label them, aren't present, then one of the key areas that could be problematic is your posture. So then we're looking for this sense of harmony. Now we're doing the wild goose, so it's possible that the name itself will offer something in that field. Not this movement, then one of the other movements, some lovely images, of course. Let's change to Part in the Clouds. It's the nature of this integration of body and mind that we increasingly have influence over the body. And so where there are areas that don't feel as though they're moving very much, or feel a bit tight or a bit blocked, those are the areas that we want to try and just gradually use a combination of awareness of posture. Are we doing the movement correctly, the mechanics of the movement, but also appropriate imagery to actually begin to work a little bit more creatively with these areas. And change the dragon plucks the stars from the sky. So for instance, areas that are painful, sometimes pain in Chinese medicine are described as being knotted, like shoelaces gone tight or something like that. And so what we want to try and do is sort of tease them apart a little bit. Or we can imagine an image that I've used quite often, so like water flowing over a rock in the river, smoothing it off. Don't just ignore the pain. Don't try and push through it. And don't think, okay, it'll be okay soon. Pain is there for a reason. So if we all got twinges, twist there or something like that, and that's where the sort of ideas that I'm presenting come in useful. So long-term pain, a long-term problem should always be checked. That's where the GP comes in. But we can still, with things, we can still get that sense of movement beginning in those areas. Do one more of these. Now, pushing in 4 directions. Obviously, when we turn, we're not going to have that direct line between shoulder and hip. So it's important we're aware of, again, that sense that we move a certain amount out of line without tightening up. And at what point do we tighten up? So there's 2 things to consider. One is how you're making the movement, and remember that is controlled by the center of the body. So the movement begins here, in your hips, in your waist, gradually builds up into your shoulders. And that's quite difficult because the instinct will always be to move the shoulders first. So there's an adjustment in our thinking about how we're going to move. You can use this movement to further that awareness of what's happening in your body. We've basically got 3 types of movement. We've got a sideways push, which is this one, of course. We've got an upward push, both of which emanate from the center of the body. So a lengthening and a broadening, particularly in our back. But then we have that sideways movement combined with the turn. And it's important to recognize the different patterns, the different pathways of movement within the body, and to make sure that they don't crash on each other. Again, how we move, how far we're moving will be a big influence in that. One more time. And then changing. And if it's comfortable for you, you can begin to add the turn. And then switch sides. And again, if it's comfortable for you, add the turn. This gives us a slightly stronger feeling, particularly across our back, just above our hip. It's like if you were going to wind up one of these toys that has an elastic band, power it. You wind it up too tight, you snap the elastic band. No, you don't want to do that. Roll it to the middle of the lake. One more time. And then come back and stand. Finding your center balance, getting the feeling of your center of gravity dropping straight down through to the ground. Soften your ankles and your knees, hips. Trying to get away from the habit of straining in your back or your shoulders to hold yourself up, but rather feel that your body sits just on your hips in the way that you might sit on a chair. Repeat all the shape. So it's possible with these exercises. In fact, I think it's quite legitimate to sort of want to do this, to begin to help yourself. You could classify them, I suppose, as self-healing exercises. But common sense should also prevail here. These are not miracle cures. Despite what some of the stories you might hear, sometimes we need to see a professional, we need to see a GP or whatever. Tai can still help. Tai Chi is a really good practice for managing your general well-being and can in some instances be targeted. If you've got a stiff back, you can do certain exercises back perhaps. But whenever I talk about these things, I'm always reminded of a story I heard of a student, a very well-known, famous Tai Chi from the sort of 60s and 70s, I suppose, as much as anything else. And he was experiencing abdominal pains, and he tried acupuncture, and then he tried dosing himself, tried his herbs and so on and so forth. And then he died because he had an appendix that burst. If he'd gone to see his doctor, he could have had a very simple operation, but still be alive today. So these are not meant to be exercises that cure all ills. They're ways that we can put very positively with a sense of our well-being. But as always, a little bit of common sense. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you, but I always try and add that rider because I don't want to give the impression that all you've got to do is Tai Chi and everything's fine. It's not that straightforward, unfortunately. But Tai Chi will help, definitely. So, put the feet in the right position. Now just side to side. So it becomes quite tricky here. This is where we really do get the legs transmitting the movement. So this is a very simple idea, but it's also one, the guy who said you just relax if you want to throw people around. Effectively, it wasn't complicated, but he was getting people to push him, and when they pushed him, he absorbed the push and pushed back. Like on if you bounce on the trampoline or a bouncy castle, you drop down and then you'd get pushed back. Again, that's not easy to do, especially if somebody else trying to push you over. It's not easy to do, but simply with the pull of gravity. Gravity pulls you down into your leg, and again, come a bit closer. And I'll exaggerate a little. Perhaps if I show you from the side, actually. But as I go on, if I do this, if I stiffen up in my leg, there's a resistance there. It's like concrete or something like that. If I can give a little bit, and this is exaggerated, see how my hips are going down? I've got that. It's like dropping into the trampoline, into the bouncy castle, which pushes you back. And the first part of your body, well, maybe not, your feet will feel it, but first part of your upper body that will feel the effect of the push is the center of your body. And so it comes up and is guided through the center, and this is the commander and banner image coming into play. We choose what direction that energy force moves us in. So this yielding to the pull of gravity and the, if you like, sort of kinetic energy that grows out of that is actually one of the key things in Tai Chi. It's one of the big things that people look for all the way through their Tai Chi practice. This ability to yield and to return force, very much the sort of key to the martial understanding in Tai Chi, but also the key to other things as well. It's about how we respond, and it requires a sort of sense of non-resistance, or at least a different type of resistance. Kind of resistance you'd expect in water, in a ball that you were bouncing up and down, in a trampoline, rather than this immediate clenching, tightening up. And again, that's quite difficult to do, I think. You can let your body turn a little bit, and as you turn, your heel comes up. So you get more movement going into the leg. It's important you don't do this. Watch my, don't do this, because you fall over. So I said earlier about pushing the stick into the ground. If you were doing something like that, you would find the position, you fiddle about a bit, and then you kind of twist it in. And it's the same thing. You move your weight across, you find that position for your body, and then there's a turn, and it's a kind of spiraling down, just screwing down into the ground. Be careful not to push your leg up and not to push your back up. But what you'll get then is extension on this side of the body, and before that tightens up, you allow it to pull you back. The movement in one direction creates the potential for the movement in the opposite direction. Nice and gently. Hands in front of you. Remember your arms expressing the movement, so the movement comes up through your hip to your shoulder. We hit the ball. Maintaining all the time the alignment of your body. Just allowing your arm to rise and extend out a little bit, but not to pull across, which will involve, you'll tighten your shoulder and your back if you do that. If you look carefully, you see my body turning as I do this. So my hand goes to here, not to here. Maintaining the space for the movement. And one each side. Cow gazes at the moon. As your arms drop down around about here, they feel quite heavy for a moment. And the weight moves, the center turns, and your arms swing to it. Remember, you can, if you wish, it's a slightly bigger movement, but it's achieved not by straining, but through that process of yielding. I get to here, I think when I want to go a bit further, rather than struggling to pull my arms around, I let my head drop a little. Then bring your feet back in line, turn your hands palm in, and circle. As though you're holding the ball. Dropping back. Should feel a significant movement around that central area, the lower down chin. Your hands come up to about a point in front of your shoulders. When your hands go above your head, you're far more likely to stiffen up in your shoulders. And remember, it's really important to notice small changes within your body. Go back the other way. Those are the ones that will build into big movement. And those are the ones that we can have the most influence over. And then, once again, just standing. Give it a little shake. Good. Good. 1 foot forwards. Eventually, this focusing into the center of our body becomes second nature. And then we begin to realize that, there's two ways of looking at this idea of the center. One is the physical center of the body. The one is a sort of notion that includes the center of the body, which we see going down into the feet as well. There's always a great deal of debate over things like this in the Tai Chi world. Exactly where is the lower Dantian, for instance? There's a number of ideas. I remember a friend of mine who published a Tai Chi magazine, or was involved in publishing a Tai Chi magazine, interviewed a Taoist priest, a Chinese priest who came over from China and did Tai Chi. And at one point he said to him, "So, lower Dantian, where is the lower Dantian?" The guy looked at him and said, "Where would you like it to be?" So again, the mind is very important. But none of these things should be seen as being rigid. And then just raising your toes and heel so you can get a little bit more of your weight, and you do it gradually. And think about how you're moving the leg. A common habit, and there's good reason for this actually. We would normally, if we're walking, or especially if we're running, but if we're walking too, to move the leg, we lean forward, say, and that would create a bit of momentum. We reduce the pull of gravity to help us move our legs. But we don't want to do that on this occasion. So think about which parts of your body are actually actively involved in moving the leg. And think about what your hips are doing. If I go back, closer again, back, if I think about, oh, you can't see my foot. I think my the hip drops, I exaggerate. I drop my hip, you can see how my toe comes up. And then on the other side, when I go forwards, here, if I drop this hip down, can you see the knee bends? And I don't want the knee to go out of line, so instead of the knee bending too much, the heel comes up. So both of these movements, the prelude to the stepping, involve a further yielding in the center of the body. We're talking about that awareness of sensation as much as anything physically happening. And then eventually, when you've got enough of the weight in one leg or another, you just step in. So the idea is to get to a point where really the only weight remaining in The leg you're about to move, what we would refer to as the empty leg in Tai Chi, is just a little bit of the weight of the leg itself. So it shouldn't require a strain in movement. It's this area of the body here around hips down towards your knee, really the main area. The body maintaining the alignment, the roots, the equilibrium. And then shake out. So this is not a matter of balance. If I try and balance, say on one leg like this, I sort of equalize it, don't I? That's like a tightrope, I guess, the pole or something like that. We only need to think about balancing when we lose alignment and root, become unstable. Up to that point, it's fine. So in terms of the word balance, it has a different meaning in or different context in Tai Chi to do with kind of balance and harmony rather than physical balance. So think about the alignment of your body, etc., etc., etc. All those things that I was talking about right at the beginning of the class. And then on the other side, it requires in the first instance that our upper body is very quiet, almost passive, but we also realize that that isn't accurate in many ways, that we actually begin to feel change in the upper part of our body as well. So it makes this a very interesting exercise. I think of this and the stepping as sort of being the thing that is at the center of normal walking. It's not how we would normally walk. We'd never get anywhere. You know, that momentum of walking is quite useful up to the point where we trip or slip or something like that. And then we really want central equilibrium. And raising your toes and your heel. You can turn the front foot out. This is what I generally do. And you see, I'm trying to move. I'm trying to avoid doing something like this, because then I do need to think about, well, how do I balance the body leaning in one direction? Where is that thing that would neutralize that? There is stuff like that in Tai Chi that we do, but it doesn't come into this. What you can do, and this is a very subtle exercise to condition the areas of the body that are moving the leg, is once you've got used to this, you imagine your foot stuck in mud. So it's not quite such an easy step. You have to actually pull a little bit. And it's quite a useful image. If you were doing sort of like in a muddy field or something like that, and you suddenly realise that one foot is stuck in the mud, you'll be kind of reluctant to go, well, I'll just pull it out, because you'll probably land in the mud. So it's this area here. We need to maintain the equilibrium and the structure as we take the step. I think that exercise has presented us with something that we want to be aware of in normal walking. Even though we're leaning and you go down the hill or something like that, that's going to change everything, of course. But still, we want this sense of where the equilibrium is, so that we can go back to it. You can almost argue that normal walking, if you think about the mechanics of it, and if you exaggerate it, would be, you know, I lean forward slightly, using the pull of gravity to help to propel the leg. As the leg swings through, I use this area around the pelvis to go back a little bit. So I kind of go through the central point. If I haven't got an awareness of that central point, it's difficult to go through it. That's what I mean by living at the heart of the walking. Now, have your first foot forwards. Push them across the neck. And notice how easy it is for arms and our hands to just dominate the movement. The commonest question I get asked in Tai Chi is, what do the hands do? And the simple answer is, your hands follow your body. It's not always a satisfactory answer though, because all too often the problems that people are experiencing is they're doing the opposite. They're moving the arms and our body to follow. And again, this comes down to a kind of rethinking of how we move, how we regard posture. And that leads inevitably back to, well, it's the feet, isn't it? We have to bring our attention back to the feet. And then push away. And then on the other side. And this time changing to pushing away. One more time. Bring your feet back. Rub your hands together. Tapping over your face. Head and neck. The other side. Your back. Around your hips. And then your legs. Light on your belly. As ever, none of these ideas should be seen as being purely physical or purely of the mind. The notion of coming back, bringing your attention back to your feet is also the act of just drawing your attention back a bit, giving yourself a bit of space only in your body, but in your mind. You know, when things are crowding in on you a little, it's nice to have something you can focus on, come back to get a sense of coming back to your own center in those kind of mental terms, that quietness, that stillness, that space, however you care to think about it. And Embrace Tiger Return to Mountain is a great exercise to help us to focus on what that is, what that involves. So as you do this, think about what it means to you, not what I say, but what is the thing when the next time you get flustered or panicked by something, or you feel under pressure, what's the thing you want to think about that's going to give you a chance just to get some relief from that. So Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain. One more time. And stand. Thank you very much, everybody. Remember that I'm putting one of these this week up on YouTube, so if you miss a class or you feel you want to go over it again or just get bored and want to have a laugh, then check out the YouTube channel, and we'll put other stuff up there as well at times. So, okay. Questions, anyway?